Hello there, I'm Zephyr, and today I'm going to show you my newest track called Warm Feeling. This track is free to download with a link in the description, but if you find that you want to dissect this track even further on your own time, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll post my MIDI files, my audio stems, and project files for your own educational use. So let's jump right into it. Alright, I'm going to start with this sketch here. Open it up. The key of this song is in F Melodic Minor. And the chords I used are the 1, the major 7, a minor 4, and minor 5. So a 1, 7, 4, 5 chord progression here. I believe this is a minor 7th chord here, a D sharp major, an A sharp minor, and this is a C minor 7, and I think I added a 9th on top, but I'm not positive. I'm not very good with chords, but I believe when I was creating this, I picked those out and made those chords based on those, the bass notes of the keys. After that, I created a little melody for it. Oops. And with that melody, this is basically the entirety of the track right here. Once I came up with this concept, the rest of the track starts to fall into place. Here is just where I arranged it in a more rhythmic fashion. And then this right here is just where I experimented with different chord groupings, way I can voice it where the notes either lead together or more separate. And I don't even know if I use this, but sometimes I sketch a little further out. Alright, the next section was going to be the Plucks. We'll start with the first one. This is just your old standard silence. This is your old standard silence patch with the cutoff, of course, modulated. I added some delay to the sound as well. Usually it's just a taste, and sometimes it's real low. Sometimes I don't even add delay, but this time I did. For EQ, I just shaped it basically to what I felt it needed. And that's it for that layer right there. The MIDI notes are just a copy paste of my sketch, just rhythmically arranged. After that, I added a layer on top of that to give it more presence. If you listen to it by itself, it probably doesn't sound very good, but it's not for it to sound good, it's more to add a quality to the Plucks sound overall. That was my thinking behind it. EQ. Yeah, I just took all the lows out of it basically. That's all I wanted. I just wanted it for its little top presence. And the actual sample itself is just a little percussion sample that I was digging through and found. So if you haven't tried using a percussive sample to layer on top of your Plucks, anything really works. You can get really creative, but it's something worth looking into your productions. You might learn, you know, or you might create a really cool little effect. The next little layer here is the top layer of the Plucks. And with that one, basically, there aren't even no EQ. Basically, though, I just wanted to add a little bit of a presence on just the upper kind of section of the chord progression that's playing. So the way I laid out the midis, I just copied and pasted it over, but instead of using all the information under here, I deleted everything and kept just 2 or 3 notes per little section, and altogether it kind of culminates into this. And that is the entire section of the Plucks. These little filters are all just volume automation. I have a send, and I usually automate this little knob right here to kind of apply some mixing when the bridge is coming in, or if I want to change it up a little bit. Same with the top, the attack, and this is just the filter, so this is actually controlling the quality of the sound right here. Alright, let's start on the pads. I'm going to open up my very first one here. It's just your basic kind of pad there with minimal processing done to it, or not processing, but messing with the patch. So this is the preset. I didn't really mess with much of these knobs and stuff like that. Most of the time, only thing I really mess with when I mess with these are the cutoff and resonance, and I may shape it a little bit differently with the mod envelope depending on what I'm hearing. I have it routed to this mixer track. EQ, of course. I'm running it through a compressor, mostly just to give it saturation. So when it rises up in the filter cutoff, you can hear it kind of start to buzz a little bit. That's the intention why I've added this. You can really hear the saturation, distortion start to kick in. And it's very much just tailored to taste. I just put it to taste, you know. After that, I have a post EQ, just kind of taming out any of the lows that might have came through or got introduced because of the compressor. And it's routed to a sidechain track here where that's sidechaining everything. I'll explain this a little bit more in depth here in a second. The next little section here. The MIDI notes are the same. These are just the same exact as my sketch. I just stretched them all out to fit into each bar. Another preset that I found using Silent, and then automated the filter cutoff here, the same intention. Only thing I'm doing with this one is I'm running it through EQ, taking out some more of the lows. All together. Alright. And then we'll talk about this ARP here. So I actually really love this little ARP. I found it using a hybrid. I think I got it for $1 off a plugin boutique. They have sales and stuff like this all the time. And if you want like new little plugins to mess around with that are really cheap on your wallet, This is a very good one just to mess with, and also really does make good sounds as well. Very effective. Also, but I found this Arp Star Glitter, and I was just fell in love with it, and it kind of was the basis of the Arps that I use for the entire track. As you can see, I just used them the entire way through. I have it routed to a mixer here. EQ, some reverb, and this little effector is a flanger that the flange gets introduced as my bridge comes in, and a little, oh no, in the beginning it's just a little low pass, and then it flanges out near the outro of the track. That's what this flanger is for, and I'm automating these two parameters right here. These two parameters correspond to this right here. And then some post EQ afterwards. It's routed to my sidechain track, so it's getting ducked with the volume as well. And that's literally it. I mean, there's nothing else done to this except maybe I think I did low pass this. I haven't already mentioned that. Yeah, that's what that EQ's for. It's just a low pass I use to trim out in the beginning. Next up, I'm going to work on the melody. There's like some echoes, which is part of like the melody, and then there's this melodic section right here. I'm just going to break these down together here because they are definitely played in context to each other. And what's going on here is I found a little sound that I like. I was looking for something similar to like a steel drum or like a kalimba or something, you know, very percussion but still has a tone to it. And I ended up falling upon this, so I went with that. And what I did was I routed it to a mixer channel, of course. And these are without the effects right here. So you can see this delay here, this delay bank that I added on here, really it keeps that thing going throughout the whole thing. And this is a technique I love to use. I really love this. You just, you know, of course you give some EQ, you throw it on some delay, and the delay is simply going to contribute to the melody. Like it's not meant to be subtle. It's meant to be actually very bouncy. And I do that intentionally. Sometimes I even increase it at certain sections and then decrease it as, you know, a verse plays or something. But it just really makes the sound glue together, especially when you're playing around with like these little notes. After that, there is some post EQ afterwards, just dropping the lows and dropping the mids. Stereo shaper, this is to kind of widen it out. So it starts here and I just kind of bring it up here to widen it out. I listen while I do that and stop where I think sounds good. And then that is running to sidechain. And of course everything is running to some verb here. Yeah, I just have everything running to this, and I have one reverb unit. The melody. And the whole entire process behind this melody here is, this is the same as my sketch. If you remember me showing you this sketch, this melody is, the whole section is just broken up into like little pieces. Whereas this little echoes on top is more of like a, it's more like a counter melody, I guess you could say. It's just kind of something that complements this thing. But my whole process behind this was to just slowly bring in elements of the main melody until, you know, it doesn't really kick in until the second part of the track. So I just kind of withheld that entirety from the listener until you make it to the bridge. And that's when it plays out, and you know, you get like the happy tune. It's really simple, you know. So when you're working with, you know, simple kind of concepts or simple structures, breaking them down to even smaller chunks can really give you a lot more material to work with in your productions. Something to keep in mind. I run this melody line right here through a mixer. Only thing that's really being applied here is EQ. And that's probably it. Yeah, I didn't even really do much with the melody section. I think most of my processing I did messing around. I don't know if I showed you the plugins for these two, but this is a flute and that's just the echoes. And then the melodies are a culmination of Nexus. I found Spire, which some of them I might not even be using. Not sure. I'm using this for the top. And then for this section, I'm using these two. The next bit here is going to be the vocals. So, I mean, basically, it's just a output or XL preset that I found. And I just kind of went through, played around, and found one that kind of fit in with the melody. Just one of those experiment projects, you know, where you're like, I'm just going to see if I can make something with this. So I dragged that in there, and I ended up coming up with this little creation right here. The little extra bit I did to it, besides whatever the inbuilt, you know, parameters are, pretty sure I added a little bit more echo to it, and then I reversed one of the little echoes. I recorded it and reversed it out, kind of brought it in, and you can hear that here. Yeah, I just took I recorded this little bit through Edison. In fact, it's still here. Recorded it through Edison, and then use that as a way to kind of keep bringing the vocal back in at the end of each bar, or 4 bars, so midway through. With the processing, of course, this Replica XT, just a delay bank here that I use that to create I think I use it to create a more heavier echo for the vocal sound, and then I turned it back down to fit into the mix. So that's just the same as the delay bank, it's just a different version, and I just kind of played with the parameters until I found the echoes I wanted. Some post EQ right here, cutting out some of the mids. The reverse vocals, it is just I tailed it out, recorded it, played it back, and then I ran it through a filter, which I don't know. I think that's just purely for shaping the sound. I don't think this is automated. And then an EQ, and then a gross beat that gates the volume in. And that's pretty much how I approached my vocals. Now we'll start to the bass. I think I just designed this one. I didn't do anything too special to it. I just sort of made a basic little patch here, and I did 2 unison, and I turned the pluck down a little bit to create this, and I did that intentionally to create that kind of plucky bass sound to go with the beat, because the whole beat it's very like bouncy, you know, and I wanted the bass to have a little bit of bounce to it. This just kind of gives it presence, and still the bass sort of grooves with the plucks as they go as well. Some EQ applied to it, and this is just some craziness. I don't usually do this, but this is what I decided to do this time, and I rolled with it. I'm okay with it. And that's literally it. Bass processing, I really don't ever go too deep into it, just enough to I'll make sure the mids, you know, it sounds good in mono, and if it sounds good in mono, then I'm not too worried about it. We'll go to the drums. And this is a real simple drum layer as well. I really take my approach to drums very simple and straightforward. I don't try to do too much. The kick sample, just a kick sample I found I like, and I always trim out the tail of the kick to fit more with my track. Sometimes it needs to be less. A lot of times it needs to be less, to be completely honest. And then I'm running that through some EQ here, where I've cut off the lows, and then I boosted a little bit of the presence area. Next is the drum loops. These are pretty standard. There's nothing I didn't really do much to them. I just like the way they fit into the mix, so I rolled with it. There is some EQ going on here, and then I do have them slightly panned out. It's just like a really bouncy groove, so I just kind of roll with it. I felt like I didn't need to add extra to it. You know, if it's not broke, definitely don't fix it. More EQ here, same thing, just taming out the lows and increasing probably some of the presence treble area here. This little section right here is the same as these are the same. I just made this unique and reversed a little portion of it to kind of swoop it into the next section. Without, you know, so it really kind of swoops you into the next little bit that's going in. It's real subtle. You can't even like super hear it unless you're paying attention. If you go back and listen, you will hear it now, but I really like doing things like that, just playing around with reversing a sample, bringing it in, seeing what happens. You know, the worst that happens is it just sounds garbage and you gotta throw it away. I don't even know if I'm running this through any. Okay, I am running it through some compressors and stuff. I do have all my drums routed to a drum bus here, and there's just some EQ. There is a compressor I'm throwing on top of it. I'm just using real light compression, so I just basically where it starts making the needle jump, and I just do that just to kind of give that character of that compressor to the drums. Honestly, the drums themselves, they don't really need, especially drum loops. I don't really feel like they really need to be compressed too much unless there's just too much going on. Most of the time, they're pretty good, so I'm never too worried. This is just for, you know, adding color to the drums. That's what this compressor was for. It's like a color compressor. And then I have a little boost right here in the high mids, and that's literally it. All right, onto the effects and transitions. They're just basically your standard kind of sounds. I have this sound right here, EQ'd of course, and ran through some reverb. And what it does, the intention of this little sound right here is just to carry the drum track through. 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's literally what I'm trying to do there with that. It's just kind of add a little sparkle and presence to you know, the fours here as it goes through. So this is my section, and I want to add a little sparkle throughout the section so the drums can kind of keep carrying on. This right here is the Arp sample that I have going on here, the pad Arps. I recorded a little section of it, and then I just automated the volume up and down in between transitions just to create a pretty cool effect as for when it's all played in context. And it's really subtle. It's kind of hard to hear, but when I put it in there, I felt like it was what needed to be there, so I just left it be. A little EQ to that, and then some reverb as well to dry it down and wet up a little bit. Low decay just to keep it. It's kind of like, it makes it a lot more like plinky, far away. So that's simply I just played around with the dry, wet, and decay, damp, you know, until I found that little setting where it sounded a little bit more kind of in the back, you know, and I was cool with it. Next is a little, you know, standard crash. This is pretty basic, just kind of appears right when the verse drops and hits. And then I have a little downlifter. And I have a delay added to that just to rhythmically follow the track as it kind of goes. So it blends. It's more of a blending technique, so it blends a little bit better. Last little bit. This is just the same thing. It's ran to a delay. Oh, these are on the same mixer track. This is ran to a delay, and it's just that. It just kind of catches you on the left and right as the beat's still going. My last little transition effects here. It's just this little sound. That sound, but I just ran it through a flanger EQ, and these two little automation clips is me simply going and automating the mod X and Y on the sample itself. It was just a little experiment more than anything, but it turned out really well. Okay, and I believe that's everything about that makes up this entire track. So that's the basis for the entire track right here. Hopefully I broke down everything that made sense, but I am going to go over just a couple more things here that I didn't go over when I was breaking down each individual section, and that's mostly my mixer. Everything here is all routed to these these buses here. All my stuff is kind of going that way, and I have them routed here. And one is just a melody mix, one is just a melody mix without sidechain, and one's a drum mix, and then a overall pre-master here on top. For the Plucks, or let's just say melody mix, honestly, that's because this is kind of where all the melodies that are going to be sidechained go, and these are where all the melodies that aren't going to be sidechained go. For the melody mix, though, I just have it running through some EQ. I'm running it through an OTT, but it's real like low, like 9% depth, and it just adds just a little bit of kind of sparkle to the overall sound, and that's it. The rest is all just kind of EQ, and I just kind of made these decisions afterwards. These are all kind of mixing afterwards. The sidechain, this is a sidechain track, so I have my tracks routed. My Plucks routed to my melody mix. Melody mix is routed to my sidechain mix. Sidechain mix simply just has the volume automation on it, and it's just ducking the volume down for me. That's what this little section here is. That's what this little automation, these little bouncy automation clips are, sidechain. Then the no sidechain mix, it's just the same exact settings on the OTT EQ, and I think I took a little bit more lows out of there, and then some EQ as well, just some post EQ. This is more just mixing and shaping, or kind of like overall presence EQ. The drum mix, I think I already explained that, but it's just going through a compressor to give it color more than anything else. It's not really taming anything or doing anything wild or drastic, so it's real light on my compression. To the pre-master, I run it through a Maximus sometimes, and this is just to merge the low end more than anything, and this may entirely be a preset. Sometimes I use Maximus to multi-band compress, but I don't really mess with it too much as far as just to make sure my lows are monoed, and kind of observe and do some pre and post gain on the mids and highs if I have to. It's very just depends on the context and depends on what the problem is. And then I have some post EQ on the master here, some slight dips, a little slight dip in the mid area, and that's it. After that, it routes out to the master, which I had a flat EQ on just in case, but nothing. And that's literally, oh wait, one more thing, the important part, the reverb. So I have all these units, you know, just kind of sent over to this reverb, and the lows, of course, are brought down. It's running through a Valhalla room, and this is really just a preset, but sometimes I mess with the decay as I add things to the reverb unit. And then after that, I'm running it through a compressor. And honestly, I'm doing this trick because it was suggested to me. Somebody, another producer was telling me about trying to run your reverb through a compressor. And I was just giving it a shot, to be honest. I'm not 100% on like how to fully utilize this, but the essence behind it is you turn up the sound of your reverb while also not getting too out of hand with it into the mix. So I'm just turning up like the reverb tails into the mix. The whole idea is to glue the reverb into the mix together so they all sound like very close together and good. And that was my reasoning behind that. All right, I think that's everything that this track is right here. So I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown, and I hope you found something out that maybe you didn't know, or maybe you've seen something that you could apply in your own productions and your own kind of takeaway. And this is honestly, this is just like the essence of how I make progressive house, you know, or melodic progressive house. This is what I usually my pretty standard like approach here. The rest, once I get my sketch going, once you have your sketch that you create, the rest of the track really literally will fall into place. You just put the notes in the right place, and then you experiment with, you know, the scale. If you're in that scale, it's really cool just to experiment with notes that fit in, you know. So if you like this project, or you find that you want to kind of dissect this project a little further, anything like that, I do have an option available for you to do that, and that's all on my Patreon page. So if you just jump on over there, and you can see where just by becoming a Patreon and donating a certain amount, $5 for the MIDI stems, or $1 for the a high quality wave version of this track, you can absolutely do that. Just check that out, and no obligation required, but any support really helps. And I look forward to doing the next one with you all and showing you my next track and how I broke it down. It's really exciting. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for hanging with the Cool Breeze.